Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Coder Conversations. We have a returning guest, Jon Dare, musical composer, and also performer. Welcome back, man. It's been a while.
Hey, Kevin, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's definitely a pleasure to have you back, man. I'm sure a lot has transpired since we last spoke.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There's been a lot of stuff going on. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, sure. To just give maybe new listeners a little bit of recap, can you just give a short summary of who you are and kind of like what are you doing today?
yeah. So I am a video game composer, performing artist, and a kind of doing session musician work now. Based out of New Jersey. A few of the video game titles I've worked on, titled Flip Shot. That's an indie brick breaker type game with like nature backgrounds, and I kind of made like a calm soundtrack for that. Um, and I've done a few smaller one-off things for titles. And I just released an album today, actually, which is a funny coincidence because uh, I forgot exactly that I was going to do the podcast when I scheduled that, but yeah, I just released an album called Part today. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Perfect timing. So, where can they get this album and what kind of genre is it?
Yeah, you can find the album any streaming service. I have it on YouTube, it's on Spotify, on Apple Music, and it's on all the streaming services you can imagine. Also, like Bandcamp and SoundCloud. Yeah, and I'm not really good at describing genre, but I'd say that it's very piano and vocal based for most of it with like a lot of harmonies and stuff. There's also a bit of a surprise at the end where some other instruments come in. So and it's not too long, honestly. It's like 25 minutes. It's a very short album, but feedback's been good so far, so I'd love it if you check it out. And that's called Part.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, maybe we can play a little bit for the audience if you don't mind.
Oh yeah. Sure.
Okay, yeah. While I get it loaded up, yeah, can you tell us like the inspiration behind this album? Like, what did you hope to accomplish with this? Is this going on like a video game, or is it just more like different melodic pieces in your mind? Or
Yeah, this is more of just kind of fulfillment for myself and just I I joined a band last year, or now it's 2023. I joined a band in 2023 called Half Soul, and I never really been in a band before with other people who were interested in like songwriting. So, it's being around those people and seeing what they were doing kind of inspired me to really try and write like songs on the piano with my voice. And, you know, throughout that year and last year, 2024, I just compiled a bunch of songs that I was playing live at gigs where I just do my voice and my piano. And then a couple of months ago, somebody at one of the gigs was just like, "Where can we find your music online?" I'm like, "I don't actually have any of these particular songs online." So I'm like, "You know what? You've given me the inspiration. I'm gonna actually make this a reality." So I spent a couple of months putting everything together and making a cohesive 8-song, very kind of short album. Um, and that's kind of how that happened. And, you know, if you listen to it, I'm very inspired by Radiohead and kind of the hauntingness of that kind of style that they have sometimes in their songs. So that's what you would probably expect from it. So that's what you can probably expect from the album.
yeah, that's pretty amazing that you actually went through and created the album versus, a lot of people talk about they're gonna do it, but you actually did it.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time
And it,
in a short period of time.
Yeah, like what is the process like of actually releasing an album, like getting it out on the major platforms and marketing it?
Yeah. Um, my process is well, in terms of actually making it, I knew it was gonna be pretty simple. I wanted it to primarily be just my voice and the piano. So that's how I was able to kind of squeeze everything in just like a month and a half, 2 months. So my setup is like I have a Yamaha keyboard, it's like an 88 key keyboard. I use it for everything. All my piano recordings on Spotify, all my live gigs that are that it's that piano. So I had that, and then I had my RE20 microphone, which is one of my favorites. It's just really fun to, use. I think that makes my vocals work pretty well. So it's just those are the two things. I just kind of sat down and mostly, tried to play the vocals, tried to sing the vocals and the piano at the same time, for most of them. So they're like kind of live recordings, but I maybe made some tweaks afterwards and recorded harmonies afterwards. Some of them are to a click track, some of them are not. Um, and that's kind of the process for most of the songs on the album. There are a couple songs on there where it's not just the piano and vocals. There's actually other instruments. Like I play acoustic guitar on 3 of the tracks, and I play bass on one of them. There's some synths, but those were all added in after the initial wave of things, you know. I also collaborated with my bandmate and founder of the band that I'm in, Half Soul, Dylan Penapau. He's percussionist on the album. He plays the drums on the final 2 tracks called Deceiver and Part. So, yeah, that's kinda how the album was made. I'm kind of like a budding multi-instrumentalist. My primary instrument is the piano. That's the one I've been playing the longest, but I've really been putting a lot of effort into my guitar and bass skills over the last year or so. So I kinda wanted to showcase that on the album a little bit.
Oh, awesome, man. Yeah, seems like you're multi-talented.
I'm trying.
Yeah, in a second I'll get the album up and playing. But yeah, in the meanwhile, can you tell us a little bit about your experiences in creating and joining and playing in a band and any interesting stories you may have come across, like any interesting venues or
Yeah. So the joining of the band happened 2023, and I had met Dylan through a series of open mics that were in the area. I I kind of used to be more into this, but like going to open mic nights pretty frequently. I still go like a couple times a month, but I used to go more often than that. But he and I had met up at these open mic nights and kind of I liked his stuff a lot, got to know each other, and then I eventually asked him like, if you want someone to collaborate with, or I don't know if he asked me or whatever, which way it went, but I ended up playing on one of his songs, called I think 2 of the songs, they're called "Get You One" and "Untitled Number 4." I ended up doing, like, laying down some piano for those tracks, and, those were released back in 2023, like, a little bit before I joined the band, and then kinda after that, you know, he asked me if I wanted to play a gig with him and his band in September of 2023 at a venue called Ortlieb's in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I was like, yeah, I'd never done that before really with a band. So I thought that was going to be a good opportunity. And I started practicing with them like a month and a half before, and got to know everyone else in the band. And my God, I was so scared. Like I I don't really get nervous anymore with music, but like I was more nervous than usual because I was like, this is my first time really playing with a band. But thankfully everything turned out well. People seem to like the performance. It's actually a live album now. You can actually listen to that experience on YouTube. It's called Ortlieb's Autumn 23, I think, if you look up Half Soul.
Oh
Um,
wow.
but yeah, so after that show, I pretty much joined the band full time, and that's kind of where it is now. We're working on putting out our own music, our own album slowly throughout the year. We're releasing singles, including next week, which our first pair of singles is coming out. So yeah,
Oh, nice.
that's
So
kind of
do
the story.
you like regularly tour, like play at different bars and things of that nature, or?
Yeah, we do play at venues in Philadelphia. We've kind of taken the last half of the year though, um, slow in terms of our presence in person because we've been focusing on getting this album done because it's been in the works probably for 2 years, I would say. At least some of the songs have been around for 2 years. So the last few months, we've only played, I think our last show, when was our last show? Maybe a couple months ago. We played a show. I think it was, no, I'm blanking off the top of my head, but yeah, in the past few months, we've played just a handful of shows. What we're gearing up to do more as we start to release songs. Our next show, for any Philadelphia locals, or if you're crazy enough and you want to travel to Philadelphia to see us, um, we're going to be playing on the 28th of March, which is a Friday at Ortlieb's in Philadelphia. We're playing with a few different acts. I don't know if they're announced yet, but we have a few different acts that are going to be playing along with us. So that should be fun. But in terms of some other venues we've played at, um, we've played a few shows and a few basement shows. There's one in that I was at in West Philadelphia um, last year that I'd never been to a West Philly basement or any really basement shows, but like it did feel like going into a cave because some of
Oh
those
wow.
houses are hundreds of years old, and like it feels like going into a cavern.
Oh wow.
It's truly a unique experience. I'll say that. Like the walls are it was very punk. The aesthetic was very punk. Like the walls had lots of graffiti on them, and I felt like I was in a punk venue. It was cool.
So it's kind of like a basement at somebody's house, like a
Yeah,
old
just
mansion, and
yeah, like a house show. It was in a basement.
oh
Yeah,
wow, that's really cool.
i- it was. We've played a few venues where there's like the bottom half is like a bar, and then there's like an upper half of the venue that has the location where acts perform. One of the places is called the Khyber Pass Pub. It's in Philadelphia. I enjoyed that a lot. That was a fun venue. We did that back in May of 24. We've also played some further out locations in Pennsylvania. One of them's called Cosmic Arts Studio, which is in Pottstown, and it was another venue with some interesting things going on. I remember going in there and like they have a lot of art there. I guess they have, I don't know if they have just artists there or not, but I remember seeing some fun some SpongeBob art there just like kind of
Oh
being
wow.
around. Yeah. Like do you know the fancy Squidward or like the hot Squidward? I don't know what it's
No,
called.
no, I haven't
But
heard of
if you
that. Can you
don't,
explain that to us?
I wish I could explain it better. There's just like I think there's a joke in SpongeBob where there's like a version of Squidward that looks like more hot, and they
Oh
anyway
wow.
they had a version of that at the venue. Just somebody had the art, and it was funny. But yeah, there's just some cool venues we've been to as a band.
Oh, nice, man. Yeah, just to segue a little bit, let's get into your album, and after we do a brief listen, can you tell us about this track? I'm about to play it. Let me know if you can hear it.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
All right, here we go. Is it coming through?
It's cutting out a little bit on my end. I think it's buffering. Yeah, it seems to be buffering a little.
Okay. Did you want to try playing it from your end? Because yeah, like you mentioned, it's kind of buffering.
Yeah, I can try. Should I just screen share? I can try screen sharing if that helps. Let me see. Oh yeah, I'm gonna try this. Are you ready? Can you see this?
Let's check it out. Yep, I can see you.
Wonderful. Let's try it. Let's see if it works.
All right, ready whenever you are. Let's see. Okay, I think I got to bring it on the screen. Here we go.
Yep.
There we go.
All right. This is a song called Moving On. I'll play just like a minute of it.
Is moving on. You stay your claim, then God get out your chariot and save yourself alone. Oh, Betiragesh, flying through reckless.
So there's a little bit of that track.
That's pretty awesome, man. So you play the instruments and you're also doing the singing.
Yeah. Yep. All of that is me. I did all the production and the recording and the mixing and the mastering. Yep.
Oh,
It's
awesome, man. Yeah, you're really talented. It kind of has like an ethereal sound, like, and I can sense a little bit of the Beatles in there. Or
oh yeah. I from some crazy it's a crazy fact that the Beatles are actually my most listened to artist on Spotify this year. Um I don't like I don't consider myself a super fan or anything, but I I was on a trip to California back in October for a convention called Game Sound Con, and I decided that I would listen to the entire discography of the Beatles. So I spent my 6 hour plane ride back and forth listening to the discography. So I listened to most of it. And I think I finished up another day. But yeah, I think because of that, my Spotify thought that I was like a super fan.
oh wow,
So I'm not like listening to them all the time. I just listen to them like in a big chunk. But yeah, I kind of decided I wanted to do that. I did it before years ago, but like I wanted their inspiration for like songwriting because I think I mean, might be a hot take, but they're pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. I can definitely hear the influence in this song. What is this song about if you were to explain it to the audience?
I wish I could. My lyrics are more like, so I should explain when I do lyrics for a song, they're not in advance. I come up with the melody first, usually through like humming it or, you know, just singing it in advance and like recording a demo with wordless vocals. And then I just kind of sit down with them and just kind of think subconsciously, like throw things out there. So there's probably some sort of meaning, but I prefer other people to think of it, whatever it means to you, if that makes any sense.
Right, right. Yeah, I got you. So yeah, just to reiterate for those who might have missed it, where can they get this album at?
You can find it, well, you can see right now it's on YouTube. So if you look up my name and then part, it should work. If not, yeah, you can look me up on just the internet and you'll probably find my Spotify if you just look up Jon Dare Spotify on whatever search engine. um, or any other streaming service if you don't use those two. If you want to use Apple Music, or if you're on Bandcamp, it's $5 to buy on Bandcamp. Otherwise, it's free on other services.
Awesome, man. Yeah, everybody be sure to get John's album. It's only $5. It's always good to support upcoming talented musicians.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Even if you could just listen on YouTube, anything, I like to hear what you think. Any feedback, anything you enjoyed.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to use that to segue into like the actual lifestyle of being a musician. Like I know you're probably not doing this completely full time. You're kind of hoping to transition into doing music full time.
Yeah, I have a day job. I work full time hours, um, but I am still doing music in the time that I have outside of that, and I do it professionally. So I work as a composer. I also work as a freelance musician, doing what I do, releasing music and playing gigs. But yeah, balancing everything is sometimes a challenge, because working, full-time hours can be tiring, coming home afterwards and just like not having all the energy to do everything I want. So I just try and focus on uh, what I can do, and that means sometimes some parts of my pursuit don't fully get fleshed out in the time that I want them to. So, like right now, I've been focusing more on like my artistry with the time I have, um, and not as much like actively searching for gigs in terms of like composing stuff. But like I believe that I'll return to that eventually, and not that I've completely shut it out. Like I'm still going to networking events. I'm still keeping in touch, talking to people. But but yeah, it's just and part of it's like I'm kind of scatterbrained and I like to do a lot of things. So it's kind of healthy for me to take breaks. Because I think ideally someday when I am full time, I do want it to still be like this, where it's kind of a portfolio where I'm diverse, like I do my commission work, I do my composer work, but I also have a large portfolio of live gigs and session work. Like I've done a little bit and I want to do more because I think it suits my skill set. Because my skill set's very like improv based and I can work well spur of the moment. So that's kind of what I'm leaning towards. But in the meantime, yeah, I'm supporting myself with a full-time job that I have.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Like this podcast is kind of like my side thing, and after working 8 hours or more, you really have to try to find the energy to invest in your side passion. But I think it's ultimately worth it because if you can make that your full time passion, then what could be better than that?
Yeah, and that's the thing. I do want it to be my full-time thing, and I know I'm making the steps that are going to enable that. The thing I just want to make sure is like I never lose sight of, why I did it in the first place. Like I want to make sure I get to that point and it's like sustainable. Because sometimes you can get to a position, especially as a freelancer, where you say yes to everything and then like you're just like, why are some of these things that I'm saying yes to draining me too much, And it's
Right.
just like, why did I leave my job before when I'm now like just overwhelmed with things? These are things I think about to try and, you know, make sure you're taking on gigs that are sustainable.
Yeah, that's a excellent point because, something that's a passion, once it becomes your full-time job and you have to make money off of it to survive, then you start doing things you don't necessarily want to do and you can
Yeah.
end up losing the passion for it. So,
Yeah. So that's something that, having the day job, having that cushion is useful for, because fortunately, since a lot of my expenses are covered, I can choose to do things that I want to do. But the trade-off is still like I'm spending a lot of hours during the week, not potentially doing what I want to do. So,
right.
yeah. So it's definitely a trade-off.
So, yeah, like what does a roadmap look like for you to be able to do music full time? Like you're applying to different companies, and if so, what kind of music do you want to be doing? Like video game music, TV?
Yeah, all of the above. Um, I think my path, I do want to be a full-time freelancer. I don't really currently have plans to work in a studio capacity. I like the freedom of being able to be in control of my time. I think I am good at that, and I would not benefit from having somebody highly manage my time. So I think the path for me is to become a freelancer full time, and by doing to do that, um, I mean, I'm still a work in progress, but I definitely need to find some more, just kind of find more of everything that I'm already doing, but still be diverse. Like finding more, um, like 3-hour corporate gigs where I'm just playing piano for that amount of time, because that's sustainable for me. I know I can do that. I enjoy that. I don't think I'll get tired of it. Well, maybe if I did it every single night, my hands would be tired. But like if I had one like 4 times a month, that's good. But that would be in addition to, working on commissions and also perhaps getting royalties from released music. But that's not a big thing for me because that, as you might know already, is like royalties aren't too good from streamed music. It takes a lot of streams to really make an
Oh
impact.
yeah, I've definitely heard about that. Yeah, to kind of get into surviving as a musician, um, what do you find really challenging about the industry?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Oh yeah, speaking on surviving as a musician, like what do you find like challenging about the industry?
Um, I guess the challenging part about it is that there's it's not really clearly defined how you can succeed. You know, there's lots of different ways to do well, but they don't they don't really appear. You know, they're not specific. So, um, in terms of, initially finding opportunities, for me, my challenge was I used to be, pretty shy. I'd say I'm like somewhere between an introvert and extrovert. Like I like talking to people, but sometimes I'm just like, I don't know. So that was hard initially, like reaching out to people and, asking for advice and, just letting people know that I do what I do was hard initially. But like with a lot of practice and a lot of networking events under my belt now, I feel really comfortable with it. And that was probably my hardest struggle. So like in an industry that's very people based, um, Yeah, if you're somebody that struggles with that, it's definitely difficult.
Yeah, I know the feeling. I'm pretty much an introvert myself, and getting past your nerves and going to networking events, that can be a challenge initially, but like you said, the more you do it, your nerves start to calm down and it starts to become second nature.
Yeah, especially, if you're going I mean, I've mostly gone to networking events for video game related things, but just last week there's a convention called MagFest, Music and Games Festival. It takes place in National Harbor, Maryland. So right outside of the DC area. And yeah, that's the kind of event that really works well because like if you're there and you have an interest in music and games, you'll have tons of people to talk to pretty easily that are sharing that interest. So like if you're new to networking events, and you're into music or video games, you want to be a composer, like know that most people there like the same things you do and will likely, you know, be able to sustain a good conversation with you. So that's something that helped me because the first time I ever went to one, like that's something I came to realize quickly, as you probably will if you go.
Yeah, like I know you being a freelancer, it's imperative that you go to these events and be able to network effectively. Like, how
Yeah.
are you able to not waste your time when going to these events?
Oh, it's really hard. It's really hard to know, like, well, some of these events, like, there's a lot to do, you know, like Magfest, there's constantly things going on. But like I said, if your goal is to kind of just meet people, um, you can you can have a decent time at that. Um, yeah, I mean, as long as you're having a conversation with somebody that you feel is like a good and genuine conversation, like you're connecting, it's not really a waste. Like I think because good networking is networking you feel like you can have a pretty human connection with someone else and like you both remember each other and like yeah, maybe you'll eventually learn what each other does. You probably will talk about it a little bit. And then, you know, maybe sometime in the future, something could happen, it might take you years, which is fine because you've made a human connection that you can go, you know, have good memories with and talk about like shared interests. So, like, I've made a lot of friends just going to networking events that keep in touch on like social media, and we'll meet up when we see each other at future events. Like, I did some jamming with a friend that I met at a convention like a few years ago. We finally met up again, and we did some jams at Magfest because Magfest has jam. They're called jam pods, like just in the hallways, taped off areas where people can just bring their instruments and play. So like we did that, and like we just met briefly like a few years
Oh
prior, but we
wow.
kept in touch on social media and whatnot. So yeah, that kind of thing happens just because we were in the same place.
Yeah, yeah, I've actually heard like a few people mention that you don't really go to working events and be like super goal oriented, like, oh, I'm going
Yeah,
to make
don't be
10
transactional.
connections. Yeah,
Like you're
a
there.
better word.
Networking is people, right? People don't really like to be transactioned usually, you know.
Yep.
So
Like people like working with people they like, I've heard.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that seems to be true in my experience. Like my band, how I ended up with them is like I enjoyed Dylan's music. I enjoyed being around everyone in the band, and I was just like, this would be cool to collaborate, and that's how that happened. Because I showed up. I was at yeah, showing up's important. Showing up and just being a decent human being is two most important things for networking.
Yep. Yeah, that's a huge thing is just showing up, like, because we especially if you're an introvert, it's so comfortable just being at home, and you can easily make an excuse like, oh well, not today, something came up, I don't really feel like it. But what kind of pushes you forward and says, no, I'm not going to sit at home. I'm definitely going to network tonight.
Yeah, I've definitely had nights where I felt that way, but I always believed afterwards when I pushed through it, like, I made the right choice. Sometimes, like, in Philadelphia, we have a local game dev community called PGM, Philly Game Mechanics, and there's been a huge push in the last year or two, to really make people more aware of this, our organization, 'cause, we have, like, game dev test nights every Thursday night, where people bring their games, you can just play test, get feedback. There's also, like, a show and tell in the beginning where people can showcase their stuff. It's really cool. It takes place in a marketing agency right next to, one of the major bridges, the Ben Franklin Bridge, so you can actually hear some of the traffic coming, off and on the bridge. It's kinda fun. Um but anyway, yeah, it's a cool venue. There's like a bar and stuff too. So, yeah, it's once a month. But that's the thing sometimes. It's like after work hours, it starts 7 p.m. on a Thursday. So I'm just like, I'm tired from work. My day job's a lot of driving. So I'm usually like extra tired. So I'm just like, okay, I know this is going to be worth it. It's going to be fun to meet everyone here, get my name out there. And I enjoy playtesting people's games. So, like, I show up. I try and show up every single time. I mean, of course, there are some times where my tiredness gets the better of me, but I've been there most months the last year, and now I have friends there where I can be like, "Hey, what's up?" and people remember who I am. And yeah, I definitely recommend, like, if you're aspiring to be a composer, if you're a composer, just to show up to your local game dev community if you have one, if you're fortunate enough to have one. Um, if not, there's probably something online you can show up to do at least.
Right, exactly. I know, Brian, he also did some composition for video games, but he was really looking to get his current albums into a video game. Like, if you were to advise him, how would someone go about taking music they already have and putting it, getting it placed in the game somewhere?
That's interesting. So I have my first like video game thing that anyone ever got from me was actually like that, but it's not, I don't know if it's useful information, but the way somebody found out about it was a while ago on Twitter, like years ago, and somebody was like, I had posted a video of a song called Ground Movers. It was just like an electronic kind of upbeat song. I released it under the name Uncan, which is like my other, I release electronic music under that name. And he just kind of came across it. And it's just like, can I license this for my game? And I was just like, sure. And we came up with like a licensing deal where you would get to use it in this game, like non exclusively. So, but I guess in terms of what Brian would want, um, finding an audience of game devs, or maybe looking for game devs that um, gravitate towards that kind of music in their games in the past. You can maybe like reaching out to them and seeing if they ever would have a need in the future to license this kind of music. It's more of like a cold call thing, but that's maybe one way Brian could go about it, or someone in that situation, is finding developers who have had games in the past with similar music, or if he knows of a developer who's in the process of working on a game that seems like the aesthetic might fit his songs. It could be worth reaching out. I don't know the success rate on that because I've never done it exactly like that personally, but that's something, just thinking about it, that could have some sort of impact.
Yeah, that's smart, like targeting the kind of game that you can see your music being in. And you also mentioned an important point,
Yeah,
which is like kind of cold calling, like just not being afraid of rejection. So it's a
yeah,
numbers game in a way.
yeah. That hasn't been my particular strategy because I don't think that's one of my strengths, but I'm not saying that it shouldn't be a part of somebody's strategy. It probably should be a part of my strategy a bit more than it is. But um, I think that especially if you already have pre-made music, if you already have something to showcase, that could be potentially effective. And like something I've done in the past, in terms of like cold call, cold email, cold contact is making a demo and like putting it to footage. So like sometimes a lot of the times game developers will have little clips of their game on whatever social media platform. You can like you can download that video clip and like put your music to it and be like, "Hey, look how this syncs up," and you can send it to the developer. Just as kind of like, "Hey, I kind of care about what you do, and I think this would be a good fit." So that's something that somebody who's looking to license their own music could consider doing.
Yeah, that's really smart because I've heard of people doing that in the web development world. Like they'll take a WordPress instance and make a site for a business really quick and say, "Hey, this can be your website. Like if you like this, just hit me up." So kind of putting your music to their work and letting them see how they would interact could really help sell them on it.
Yeah, yeah. That's definitely the hope. And that's something if I do more cold calling in the future or cold contacting, I should say, that's something I would do. It is a little time consuming. It's not as easy as just saying like, "Hey, here's my demo reel. Here's what I do." I mean, I feel like that's a little less personal than actually showing off like, "Hey, this is where I specifically think this music could fit in your game," or something like this, you know? Because I think if you're gonna do something with already a low success rate, I mean, why not put a little effort in and, like, try and stand out? That's what I think, at least.
Right. So let's just say that you have an indie developer out there and he's really looking for someone to do the music for his game. Like, what is the process like of working with you? Like, how would he reach out to you and, how would the proceedings go? And then when it comes to actually creating these tracks, what would that like work process look like?
Yeah. So if somebody's reaching out to me, my process is always evolving, I'm always learning, but something I like to do now is try and give them like a little questionnaire almost to if they're reaching out to me and they have an interest, just to kind of see like where they're at with their project, um, what their budget might be for audio, um, what they see the project ending up being in the future, like where it's going to be. Is it going to be something they're really like putting a lot of marketing budget? Is it going to be like a smaller project that they're just kind of releasing for friends or because all these things help inform first of all like um how much I would charge, how much um oh, something else I should also mention is like their influences for the track, like what references they might have, so that would influence like the direction I might take. And then from there we'd I might make them a demo, like a few short demos based on like what they gave me in terms of the references, and then we can discuss maybe like negotiating the terms of the commission. So in terms of the rate, or if there's any other ways of payment, if just money isn't enough. So like sometimes there can be like a skill exchange. So like I'm a musician, I would do the music, and like they could be an artist. They could make, for example, the next cover art for one of my albums or something along those lines. Or like a rev share percentage of the profits from the game. It could go on for a while, but those are the kind of things that are discussed early on, usually before anything is truly made. Um, and then after that, we can sign an agreement, depending on a few factors, and then the work can begin. And that is a process I like to be kind of um, in close contact with the developer about everything that's going on with the soundtrack. Because I like to make sure that I'm making everything to the right specifics of what's needed for the game. So there'll be some iterations that happen, that so be it. If something needs to be made less or more, that's fine. And then we just kind of go from there for a while until things are finalized. And that can take a while depending on the deadline that we've had set up in advance, usually, for the tracks. So, yeah, once that happens, I usually have all the deliverables ready and go from there. I usually, I haven't yet done this, but um, well, there's two ways that I kind of think about having my music used in a game. One that I either have made or make specifically for the game. There's like licensing the music to the game, like exclusively, so no other game can use it. Which is like what I've done in every instance in the past. Or there's like a full buyout where the owner of the game, the creator, whoever I'm working with that's getting this music, can actually buy the rights to the music, and they have the ability to use it however they want in the future. That is like that I would charge a lot of money for that, because those rights are very powerful, and losing them is a big thing.
Yeah, that's
So
kind of like what I was gonna get into next. Like, are there, any legal sticky situations people should avoid getting in, or like, hey, if we're working together, I want to
yeah,
clearly outline that this is non-exclusive, like things like that. How do you
yeah,
protect yourself?
you definitely should. You should make sure that everyone involved knows exactly how your music is being given to them. Like, they shouldn't assume that they have the copyright if that's not what you're giving them. And like, if you're new and somebody's asking you for the copyright, like new composer, and they're like, "Hey, we'd like to work with you, but we want to own the copyright to your music." You gotta be very careful, because like that is that's a huge thing to give away, and you should make sure that if that's happening, they pay you a lot of money and you really do your research. I'm not a legal expert, so I can't give much specifics, but from what I understand and what I've heard and what I've seen, that's something you got to be careful with. Not to say you should never do it. Like a lot of larger companies, if you're working with a big company, I think that's fairly standard to do. But like smaller indie devs, probably not going to ask for that. So be very discretionary about it. But as for like non-exclusive or exclusive licenses, that's like a lot more lenient, because you'll own the copyright. You can, because losing the copyright means you can't usually like put the music up and sell it like on your own either. Like they own the rights to it. So without their permission, at least.
Right. So if you give up the copyright, you no longer own the music. You can't negotiate other deals and have it
Yeah.
maybe in another show or game.
Yeah. You can't. They own it. They'd be able to use it. Yeah. So you got to be careful if you're entering that kind of situation. Um, but like I said, I haven't done that yet. I don't know. There might be a time and a place for it if you know the situation is right. But for now, for somebody in my situation, I wouldn't recommend it right now. Um, but yeah, there's in terms of solidifying agreements, you can actually write a contract, and that's probably recommended. You don't have to have a crazy like long one. There are some resources online that I've used in the past that you can that are like very short contracts that kind of spill out the details. But I'm again no lawyer and no expert on this, so if you do have a lawyer and you're entering a contract like this, I would recommend maybe consulting with them. Especially if you didn't come up with a contract and it's from the other party. Yeah,
So yeah, you kind of mentioned there might be a situation, but you haven't yet encountered it in which
yeah,
you might give away the copyright. Like what would that look like to you? It would be a lot of money for this really big company, or
yeah. It would have to be a lot of money for a pretty legitimate company that you know Like if Sony approached me and said, "We want you to make um 50 songs for this AAA game, but we need to buy the rights from you so we can use it in whatever." I mean, that's probably going to be more of a standard thing that happens. But again, it's a big deal.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like it. Would there ever be a situation where, okay, it may not necessarily be a bunch of money, but it's more so like a project you've absolutely wanted to work on, and this will really get your name out? Say, for example, hey, we need you to compose for the next God of War.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be that would be a situation which I would consider it more heavily. They'd probably present me with a contract and I would probably seriously have to invest in a lawyer, to look into it for things like that.
Right. And do you ever foresee yourself like, okay, working full time for a company, or do you always want to be a free, like more of the freelancing type of thing?
I would say more of the freelancing type of thing cuz like especially composers, it's kind of rare to have a full-time composer anymore in terms of like on staff. They're almost always contracted out. Um it might happen like at an indie company, but still like most companies are contracting out. So um yeah, with what I want to do is specifically freelance game music composing. It would probably have to be contractor. Now if you're a sound designer or you work in audio implementation or other adjacent fields in game audio outside of composing, you can get an in-house position more easily. That is more of a viable route, especially for sound designers. Which I'm not really a sound designer. I've dabbled in it, but I can't really say that that's something that um, I do professionally. Not that I'm completely disinterested. And for the right project, I would try my best and learn. But yeah, that's not something I would look to do full time. But there definitely are opportunities. I have friends I know that work in the game industry that are full time sound designers at
So
AAA companies.
for those that aren't aware, what exactly is a sound designer?
Yeah, sure. So sound designer is um, any sound you hear in a game, human had to like figure out what would be appropriate because without that it's completely silent. So they had to figure out like, okay, these footsteps that my character are making, how do those sound? And then they have to figure out like how they work. And like in recent years footsteps have become more interesting because like in old games you might just have one like looping file that's always the same sound, but now it's like I forget exactly which game it is. It might have been one of the more recent Spider-Man games from Insomniac. By the way, I love Insomniac. They're one of my favorite studios. But yeah, they had like a whole system for the footsteps where it's like depending on what surface they're on, it sounds different and like where they are. It's just like the footsteps. Like most players aren't going to think about that. But like that's where
Right.
sound design is. It's now more dynamic. And but yeah, that's like an example of it, but it goes much deeper than that. Um, some people are like really into it. I just don't know. I've just never been as much into that as some other people are.
Right. To kind of piggyback off of that, like what company would you, or what project would you like to work on, and any composers that you would like to work alongside?
I would like to work for Insomniac as a contractor. I would love to work on one of the Ratchet and Clank games in the future because Ratchet and Clank is one of my favorite series of all time. The first three on the PlayStation 2 are just like amazing games. And I know that things have changed since then, but I would just love, even if it was just one song, just give me one song, Insomniac, please. I would love to do that. Yeah, that would be my dream gig at the moment. Um, in terms of working collaboratively with composers, um, I haven't actually thought about that in terms of video game composers. Um, it'd be kind of fun to work with Toby Fox, but I don't think he actually does that much. I think he mostly does his own thing.
Yep.
Yeah, but I really like the Undertale soundtrack, and I feel like he and I have similar inspirations, so we would probably get along as composers.
Yeah, he's an amazing composer. Have you ever tried like reaching out to him and having a conversation with him?
I feel like I don't know, I never actually have tried. That's something I do though with other composers. I have reached out in the past and had conversations with them just to learn informational interviews. Um, in fact, that's something that has helped me learn a lot. And a lot of the knowledge I've shared here is from people that I've spoken with in the past. Just like saw that they, were on a podcast that I listened to, or just through the internet, or just people recommending. Um, yeah, that kind of thing is very important. But yeah, never reached out to Toby Fox. I feel like he's someone that would be very hard to contact. He seems like he does have an online presence, but like I don't know. Maybe I'll try it. Why not? It'll probably not gonna hurt.
Yeah, exactly. All they can do is say no, and you'll be in the same position as you are now. So might as well try.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
think another good strategy of like being able to interact with people is, sometimes they have, they leave comments on X or Twitter or whatever platform they're on, and you kind of respond back to them, and they see that you're a regular, then they become more open to, answering
Yeah.
your questions.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. Definitely being in the same space, whether it's virtual or not, just goes back to showing up. Like
Exactly.
if you don't have a offline community, showing up means maybe just like being in your social circle online with people that you want to talk to, whether it's on social media or if you're on like a Discord server or something. Yeah, that's good.
So yeah, to kind of close things out, you mentioned that you've contacted some of these other composers and given you some helpful tips. So if somebody contacted you, what are some of the tips that you would recommend for them to be successful in this field?
First of all, I would love it if if anyone wants to keep in touch with me or have a talk. I'd love to share advice, but just generic advice. Um, go to networking events if you can. Like I say it a lot. Like showing up is so important. Um, being visible is important. Make sure people know that you exist and that you do what you do. And this is something I'm working on, constantly making sure that people know that I'm around, that I'm somebody that does music and, you can talk to, and a human being. So that would be the first thing I would recommend is like if you have the means, try and be at events with other people. And if you can't do that or you're not really okay with that, then the next best thing is to try and be on, online circles and be in communication with people that, you might want to work with or have similar interests and working in the field that you're in. Um, so those are the things I would probably start off with recommending. And to that end, it would I would also say that um some important online resources uh to me have been, other some podcasts that I listen to as well, called Sound to Business with Akash the Car. He's been a big inspiration in terms of like listening to other composers talk. He has other guests as well. So I would recommend that too.
Awesome, man. And did you have any last words before we shut this down?
Yeah. thank you all for being here. I hope some of this was informative, that you got to learn a little bit about the industry and I guess some of what I do. Um, if you want to hear more of my music, you can find me. Just look up my name, Jon Dare, on the internet. You can find my Spotify and all that. I just released an album called Part. I'd love it if you were to listen. And thank you.
Absolutely, man. It was a pleasure having you back. And, if you ever want to come back, just let us know. We'll get it set up.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Oh yeah, it was awesome, man. And I'd also like to thank everybody for tuning in. But on that note, we'll catch y'all next time. Peace.